Ain't no holding our tongue. Go getters on the team, they'll be getting it done. Shout out to Juvenile, yeah, you number one.
Started with a dream that turned into a vision. Educated new generation is our mission. Years to the streets, yeah, we steady trying to take it. About the change.
Back to business. Huh? What again, man? Wait again a minute. Wait again a minute. Hey, there we go.
Welcome to another episode of Wait Again Minute Podcast. Today is April the 29th, 2021. What's our topic tonight, Ms. Go-Getter?
Tonight we are talking about prison reform and justice. And tonight we have with us Miss Linda and Miss Kari. Miss Linda, can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Linda Brown, and I am representing with Restore Justice of Virginia, and I am a prison and criminal justice reform advocate.
Okay, and Miss Kari?
My name is Kari Anderson. I organized Restore Justice in Virginia. It's an advocacy page. We do a lot of community efforts to advocate for prison justice and reform, criminal justice as well. And I'm just an average person other than that.
Okay.
Okay, so Miss Linda, we're gonna start with you tonight. Can you tell us what is prison reform? Like, what exactly does it mean? What's the definition?
Well, criminal justice reform and prison reform, when we're looking at an aspect in the state of Virginia, there's definitely a separation of the two. So when you look at prison reform, you look at the things that are actually occurring in the prison itself within the Virginia Department of Corrections, and what inmates go through on a daily basis and some of the atrocities that they have to endure. Then the criminal justice reform side of it is, I don't know if most of people, if you don't know, if you're tuning in, but in 1994, there was a special session held here with the General Assembly where they abolished parole in Virginia. So effective January the 1st, 1995, they did away with parole. So there is no parole in Virginia. The time you get is the time you serve.
See, that's something I didn't know.
I didn't either.
I didn't know that they stopped parole because I have heard people say, oh, they got out on parole or I got out on parole. So they're really not getting out on parole?
No, they're not getting out on parole. They're just getting out from the time that they've done. Unless they have been under the old law. So,
Okay.
So if you committed your offense prior to January the 1st, 1995, you're considered under the old law. So you
Okay.
do have guys who are still in under the old law who have the opportunity to go before the parole board every year. If you came in after January the 1st and committed your offense after January the 1st, 1995, you're no longer eligible for parole. So you don't even get the opportunity to go before the parole board no matter how much you have tried to rehabilitate yourself.
Oh, wow. So basically you're just going up there so you don't even get to go
No.
after night.
No, if you were incarcerated,
Yeah.
or no, not just incarcerated, but if you committed your crime.
Crime. Okay, it's the crime. Okay.
Right, if you committed your crime on the January the 1st, 1995 or after, then no, you weren't eligible for parole.
Oh, okay.
There's no parole for you.
Except
Okay.
for Fishback.
Right.
Now, we'll get into some of the things that we've advocated for
Right.
as far as criminal justice reform is concerned. That's what our shirts say. I came fighting for one, but I ended up adopting thousands because I went in fighting for the freedom of my husband, not really understanding what was really going on. I knew there was no parole, so when I went in to fight for him, it's like, wait a minute, Houston, we got a problem.
Right.
And so when I went in for one, it's like, no, we need to fight for the justice for all individuals, male and female, who are incarcerated in the state of Virginia. So we went in trying to restore parole in Virginia. That's one of the biggest things that we've been advocating for is the restoration of parole. So with that being said, we have had to take baby steps in doing that. So one of the things that we were able to advocate to get past was Fishback, which Kari will elaborate on that,
Okay.
and juvenile justice, which I will allow her to advocate on that with the juvenile justice parole bill.
Okay, so Kari, tell us, why did you decide to come up with, this program, or, to advocate for the justice, or would you say Fishback?
Right.
So explain to us also what is Fishback as well.
Okay, so I started advocating for my husband more on a soul level just for him. And then I realized that I wasn't going to get anywhere just advocating for him, and he happened to fall within Fishback, which I'll get to. But I just realized that doing it as a group effort, I would get more accomplished because it affected more than 500 people. Basically what Fishback is when parole was abolished, they had hearings, jury trials, and the jurors were not allowed to know that parole was abolished. So could you imagine sentencing someone, which we do here in Virginia too, the jurors sentence people, but sentencing someone and not knowing if they'll get parole or if they don't. And most people don't know parole was gone, just like you didn't know.
Right.
So if you were called on a jury right now and you didn't know that parole was gone, you would need to know that information in order to sentence someone properly.
Right.
So between 1995 and 2000, jurors were not allowed to know that there was no more parole. In 2000, a man named Richard Fishback won his trial, and it was deemed then forward and not retroactive that jurors were then allowed to know about the abolition of parole so that they could make better decisions. But the people between 95 and 2000 were just stuck with inflated sentences. So what we did was we advocated for about 5 years to try to get what we call the Fishback prisoners parole eligibility. And last year, our bill was signed into law by Governor Northam, and it was signed into law early because of COVID, and that law released my husband.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So how long has he been? It's been a year?
He's been out since August.
August of 2020? Okay, so you're saying, so although parole was stopped or done away with in 95, the jurors was not allowed to know about, the parole has stopped. So when they were sentencing people up until 2000, they didn't know. So they was giving people sentences thinking like they'll get parole.
Exactly.
So basically what you guys are trying to work towards are those people within that 5 year.
Right, and we got all of those people eligible for parole.
And your husband fell into that 5 year.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so a little backstory, history, like far as your husband, like how long was he actually incarcerated before?
For 23 years.
Wow.
Okay, so you was
23
incarcerated for
years.
23 years. And you said, and also Linda, you said you started because you was trying to help your husband.
Correct, because my husband fell into being incarcerated and committing a crime after 1995. So there was no parole options for him, so I went in fighting to restore parole back. So that was my fight, to actually restore parole back. We have not won that fight, but we're still fighting for that. But my husband was released on a pardon from the governor.
Oh, how that happened?
The good Lord.
So how did that happen? So the governor just gave him a pardon? Was it like on good behavior? Like, what happened for to get that pardon?
Let me explain, because I actually petitioned the governor's office for a pardon ever since 2007.
Okay.
So, it didn't happen overnight. We're talking about 13 years of fighting, constantly putting in pardons, constantly being a voice, constantly being out there. Building connections, and finally something came through. But it also was just not on my part, but also on my husband's part, which is something that people need to know. Yes, we're out here advocating for everyone's freedom, but that freedom starts in the mind of the individual.
That's
we
right.
can't fight for you if you're inside of the prison acting up. You understand what I'm saying? So, that also had to be done on his part. So, staying on the up and up, working, taking advantage of the resources inside, not getting infractions, keeping your head low, keeping away from people, not being in a clique, all those kind of things he had to do in order to gain attention to freedom, because essentially that's what Department of Corrections is supposed to be for, rehabilitation. And once you've done something to better yourself, then there should be an opportunity for freedom. And that's the whole point of trying to bring back parole, because now with no parole, there's no hope. So if there's no hope for you and you just got 30 or 40 years incarcerated and you know you got to do all 30 or 40 years, what's the point of going in there doing anything for yourself when you know you got 40 years to do? But if there is parole, there is at least hope, because it doesn't guarantee freedom, but it at least gives you the mindset of there is a chance that I can be released.
Right, that's true. So basically, you guys are looking for individuals that's currently incarcerated. You help those that's pretty much helping themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
Because if you have done something to better yourself and you know that you've done those things that are being required of you, then why don't you have the opportunity for freedom?
Okay.
So there's so many other things, but everyone deserves a chance. Yes, you do the crime, you do the time. I am all for that. But if we're going to have a Department of Corrections, if we're going to have a criminal justice system, if we're going to have a parole board, if we're going to have all those things in place, then people need the opportunity. And that's it, opportunity. It doesn't say just because you go before the parole board every year that, boom, you're going to automatically get parole. No, it's just that we should have faith in the system. We should have faith in the parole board is going to make conscious, just decisions about those who are there releasing out into society. Point blank.
I would like to add that reinstating parole also brings about better behavior for people inside, and it gives them something to look forward to, something to make themselves a better person for. My husband and Tony had no hope for parole, but still decided to go down that path of making themselves better people, and still hoping that one day they would be included back into society. So putting parole back would give that to other people too. It would just be better behavior. You know, there would be probably a lot less violence in the prisons. It would just give them something to work for.
Okay.
Right. It will give them something to look forward to, because I can't imagine you being in there and they're saying you're getting X amount of time, and then every day it's like you don't know if it's going to be that day. But we actually have a question, and it's saying, for those who try to take advantage of this service, but they're being denied, what do they do if they keep going up and they keep being denied?
I would say to continue what they're doing in the positive direction, continue trying to keep a job, continue trying to take advantage of the resources that are available to you, staying infraction free, staying to yourself, and have a mindset that that's not home. You know what I mean? That's not the place where you're going to stay. That's their place. Let them have it. Don't worry about no prison phone lines, the microwave, you know, people who are inside understand all of that. But don't worry about any of those things. Worry about the fact that that's the state of Virginia microwave, that's their phone, and all those things are going to be there when you leave. Exactly. So if you have the mindset to leave, continue that. Continue that over and over and over again, because delayed don't mean denial.
Absolutely correct.
Right. So Kari, do you mind? What was your husband? What was his charges?
He was actually charged with murder and robbery, and we maintained his innocence, you know, throughout fighting for him. And I also think that is what contributed to his release. Just the information that had to do with his trial and his incarceration, and then his behavior throughout his incarceration.
Okay, so how many years did they give him? Was he
131.
Sentenced? So he was sentenced to 131. How many did he actually do?
23.
23. And that was with your help and his good behavior and doing all
he
his
did the work. I put in the work out here, and he put in the work out there from the time he got in there.
And he never did. Okay, what was your husband's charges?
My husband was in there for robbery, malicious wounding, use of a firearm, and he was sentenced to 100+ years, but then they suspended some, so he had to serve 66, and he ended up doing 23.
23. That's about the same. Oh.
So now, did you guys know each other prior to this?
Nope.
No.
We knew each other once we went into the advocacy ring. We did not know each other until we met up in Richmond, both advocating for our husbands.
I think we contacted maybe through Facebook on the page and then met each other personally at an event that was at ODU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you from around here? This
From
area?
Virginia Beach, yeah.
Virginia Beach, and you're Suffolk, right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we actually have a question. Someone's son was sentenced to 40 years for nonviolent drug charges. Do you guys have any input on that or information that we could get her to be able to assist her?
What I would do, because every case is different.
Okay.
And every case is unique. So if what I would tell that person is send myself or Kari, matter of fact, just send a message, go to Restore Justice of Virginia Facebook page.
Okay.
And send an inbox. And we'll speak with that individual to see exactly what it is about that individual's case.
Yeah, we would need a little bit more background on their case specifically to be able to guide them in the right direction. And that's what the page is for, is just to guide people and to help people any way we can.
Right, and I think that's why this topic is so good, because the average person is dealing with this, whether it's them, it's their family member, friend, or whomever. So I would definitely send her the information so that she can reach out to you guys,
Most definitely.
and hopefully you guys can point her in the right direction.
That's why the page was created. When I was advocating for my husband, we realized that prisoners weren't getting information about things happening outside legislatively or just in general. And a lot of their families didn't know how to get the information. So when I started the page, I started with prisoner contacts. I started with them first, and then they told their families, and their families started to follow the page. We worked on teaching them how to learn about legislation and how to get bills passed and how to advocate for their loved one in legislation. And you know what I mean? It's important that they have information, and they weren't getting it, and they didn't know where to get it, and they would try lawyers, you know what I mean? And we can't really give legal advice, but we can hopefully point people in the right direction, at least get some help and to have some hope.
Okay. Hank, did you have a question?
So were you guys totally lost when y'all came into this? Like, y'all didn't know absolutely nothing about prison reform or anything? Y'all just started right from the bottom?
I knew nothing. The only thing that I knew was the fact that parole was abolished. That's what I knew. And that alone was enough to fuel fire to me. Because when you look at it at the end of the day, what community of people does that affect the most?
African American.
In reality, that's just another institution of slavery. Because now you don't have parole, but then now you got judges with the capacity and the ability to sentence people to these ridiculous sentences based on your pigmentation, and that is the problem that we're having. So, now they know that there's no parole, then the judges are sentencing folks all these years, because guess what? You got to do that time. There's no parole for you.
We come across a lot of people who don't believe in the system, and that's okay, but we teach them how to fight the system. And unfortunately, that's how you have to do it. You have to fight the system. So we try to talk to people and just let them know that this is the way we have to go. You have to go register to vote. We wouldn't have any of the legislation that we have right now if people had not went out and voted and turned Virginia blue again.
Right.
Nothing would have passed in this year or last year had that not happened, and that's important. And those were the stepping stones. The juvenile parole and Fishback were the stepping stones to continue to get parole back. And we have to do it legislatively. There's no way around it. It's going to take some time, but it's the only way to get it to happen.
So we do have juvenile parole.
We have juvenile for parole for persons under the age of 17. I think they have to have done 20 years.
They were sentenced to life, so they're juvenile lifers. So if you're a juvenile that was sentenced to life, then if you've done 20 years of that sentence, then you are eligible for parole. But at first, even they weren't eligible for parole.
So if you went in as a juvenile under the age of 18 and you given a life sentence, well, I would think 100 years or 70 years or 60 years is really a life sentence. So if you're given this ridiculous sentence, you're eligible for parole after 20-some years. So do they automatically go before the parole board, or is that something that you guys have to fight for them to do?
That was another law that went into place. So the juvenile lifer bill has been passed. So now whoever is incarcerated that is considered a juvenile lifer and have already done their 20 years are now eligible for parole. However, it's a lot in the process because the parole board just got hit. So, you know, you got your Fishback people, you got your regular parolees, you got your pardon request, and because the pardon request has gone through the roof because there's no other avenue for people who don't qualify for parole except to try to advocate for a pardon. So you have that, and you have the juvenile lifers. So if you have a loved one that is qualified for parole under the juvenile life bill, the first thing they have to do is the DOC has to
They notify them of their eligibility.
correct, because they have to reclassify them.
Right.
That's right. You have to be reclassified, and only the DOC can reclassify you. So once the DOC, you know, gets off their, as my grandma would say, hind parts, as the DOC gets off their hind parts and do what they're supposed to do, then they'll be reclassified. If they haven't heard anything, it's because DOC has not reclassified them. But once they get reclassified, they'll get a letter from the DOC, and then the parole board will get that information, and then they'll be scheduled for an interview with the parole board.
I just want to add to, while we're talking about juvenile, is that we work with another organization called the Virginia Coalition for the Fair Sentencing of Youth. We work with Jana White, who is very more educated in the juvenile issues, and you can reach out to her through our page as well. We work very closely with her, and she's working on legislation also to get people who are 18 to 21 also classified under juvenile, because, you know, she can give more information on that, but basically what it boils down to is persons under 21, they've proven that their brains aren't fully developed as an adult, and
Correct.
decision making and all of that, you know, is under that scope of things. And, you know, she can help with that information. We're working on that legislation as well as parole. So she would be the person to ask any specific questions on that, and we can help with that.
In regards to juveniles. Okay, what can we do as citizens to help maybe, you know, some family or friends that are going through some of the same things?
Well, listen, let me just say this. The first and number one most important thing that everyone can do in the community and here in the state of Virginia is vote.
Okay.
Register to vote. I know a lot of times as young people, even I growing up in my younger heydays, when I was first coming out of high school, oh, my vote doesn't count. Your vote counts. Your vote really counts. And we cannot continue to push for legislation if we don't have the right people representing us. So when you think about it, in 1994 is really when the change happened and the Republicans took over. The Republicans had control of this state and the General Assembly for over 20 years, all right? So back in 2014, Governor Terry McAuliffe became our governor in 2014. He was a Democratic governor, but he had a Republican-controlled General Assembly. All right? So this is another thing that I'm advocating for on tonight is Terry McAuliffe needs to be the governor again. Why? Because Terry McAuliffe was the first governor to actually attempt to change the trajectory of criminal justice here in Virginia by restoring the rights of over 200,000 felons. That's the first
Wow.
thing. And then the Republicans took him to the court to try to stop that. But that didn't stop the cause. So, you know, once he actually put in a very competent parole board, back then, that is what started the change. When Terry McAuliffe's parole board came in, the grant decision rate on the parole board went from 3% to 10%. So you saw a 7% increase of people that were actually gaining parole. People began to have hope. So with that being said, when Terry McAuliffe came out, then Northam came in. Governor Northam continues to keep that parole board that was established. So what happened now is, I don't know if anyone has paid attention to the news, but now the Republicans are attacking that very parole board simply because they don't want to see the freedom, they don't want to see the restoration of parole. So what happened is they took one person, God bless his heart, Vincent Martin, and they took his case to try to make an example out of it. The Republicans did. So what happened is Vincent Martin is a man who was convicted of murdering a police officer when he was 18 years old. He did 40 years. 40 years. And out of those 40 years, he had close to 30 years of being infraction free. Infraction free. Okay? So
That's great.
when he got paroled, now they mad. And I'm gonna just be real, because see, ain't nobody paid me to come up here and say it.
Right.
All right? So they got mad, and what happened was the law enforcement community is upset that this man has parole. All right? Now, he has been a model inmate. He's done everything possible to show that he deserves freedom. Parole board looked at him and said, well, he's done all that he can do. He has shown and proved himself that he deserves parole, so parole was granted. So what happened was, law enforcement community goes and calls the hotline to the Office of the State Inspector General. They call the Office of the State Inspector General anonymously and go, can you look into the parole board because they didn't follow the laws and codes that they were supposed to releasing Vincent Martin. They didn't notify the family, they didn't do this, that, and the third. So what OSIG does, OSIG goes and investigates. But let me just say that the Office of the State Inspector General is actually run and controlled and done by retired law enforcement. Okay, so you have the law enforcement community complaining, and then you have the Office of the State Inspector General, who is run by retired law enforcement, investigating the parole board because you got the community of law enforcement pissed off that Vincent Martin is released. So now they're saying, you know, all these nasty things. So the parole board chair at the time was a lady named Miss Adrienne Bennett. Well, she left because she got promoted to a judge. Well, they have since started attacking her being a judge just because of Vincent Martin. But let me be clear, and I'll say it here, that there was another gentleman in 2018 that got paroled after doing 40 years for killing a state trooper or a police officer in James City County, where he actually took the officer's own gun and shot him. He got paroled. Nobody said a word because he was a white man, okay? So nobody has said a word about him, which, hey, he deserves freedom too, all right? If he did 40 years and done what he's supposed to do, hey, why not? But why are you going to make a big deal out of it because Vincent Martin, a black man, gets his parole after 40 years? So people need to know what's truly going on. And this is why we don't need our state going back to being controlled by Republicans.
That's right.
Yes, they want you to think, oh, they're letting out murderers and robbers and killers and all this stuff. However, if someone has changed their whole mindset, and if someone has done what they needed to do behind bars, I mean, hey, I don't see any harm in giving someone a second chance.
Right.
Now, I ain't with all the
Right.
third and fourth chances, but everybody deserves at least a second chance if they never had a chance, especially with the fact that we don't have parole. That's why parole is so important. So important.
Yeah, it is.
I could be all night.
Why did they abolish parole anyway? You think?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, that's a good question. They abolished parole, all right? Here's a few things. So, during that time in the Clinton administration, let's start there. The Clinton administration and our current president, hey, Joe Biden's good. See, again, Joe Biden redeemed himself. But back then, Joe Biden was all about pushing for thugs to be sentenced and to have these harsh incarceration periods. So during the Clinton administration, they offered money for states who came up with this truth in sentencing. All right? So the truth in sentencing, so this was Virginia's way of creating truth in sentencing laws so they could get this federal money. Now, we know the federal money don't exist no more, so Virginia's not getting this extra money. But on top of that, their rationale was, well, we need to make the public safe. And there's a rise in crime. So they took this data from 1985 to 1991 to say, look at the rise in crime. But then we have to understand that was during the crack era, the war on drugs. So this is why we saw those things. But they took that to spin it to say, oh, wait a minute. We see this rise in crime and we got to do something about it. We have got to do something about this. We got to keep these folks, whatever time they get, they need to serve. Okay, but then you turn around and you give somebody, as this young lady or young man, whoever asked the question, you give somebody 40 years for a nonviolent crime. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
Crazy. So that's my point. You have no parole, and now you have judges who have too much power.
And I agree with that. That is too much power to get someone all those years for certain things. Now, I know you said you got into it to help your husband, but I can hear and see the passion that you have for it, like you real passionate about it. So where do you think your passion stems from? If your husband is already out, is it that you just want to help everyone, or is it just you just want to you pretty much doing it because you didn't get so deep into it and now you realizing like all of the fault of the government and the
All
court
of that.
system?
Listen.
Anger.
It's
So do you think it's anger for you as well?
Very much so. As a mother of a young black male and a young male in this state, yes, that fueled more fire. Because if you think about it, all right, let's just give a scenario. If my son went to 7-Eleven with a friend, all right, now he just going to 7-Eleven, he thinking he going to buy him something, whatever, but he don't even know the friend going to rob 7-Eleven. So he goes into the store and the friend robs the 7-Eleven. Well, guess what?
He's getting charged too.
He's getting charged with everything that person is getting charged with. Use of a firearm. My son may not even know how to use a firearm. But he's going to get that use of a firearm, and guess what? That's going to be a mandatory 5 years. That he ain't even going to be able to fight.
Oh,
so you're going to get a use of a firearm charge when you ain't even use a firearm. But that is the stuff like that fueled my fire to say, hold on, again, Houston, we have a problem.
I'm just going to add in, my husband's not here, so I'm speaking for him, but he left people behind, and I know that Tony did too. There are good people in prison that deserve second chances.
Very much so. And we
you said people like their cellmates
the other
and
people
stuff.
in prison that they grew to know and lived with for 20 years. They had to build relationships and families in prison. And they left these people behind who, and we're fighting for them.
Okay, that's what I'm about to ask you. So are you guys fighting for the people that they left behind?
Well, I think can all agree that there needs to be a change in Virginia. And I also agree, I don't know how to say this appropriately, but sometimes people do things and might deserve punishment.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I do believe that people can redeem themselves and deserve second chances,
right,
or at least to be looked at for a second chance.
Right.
And I think that needs to change here, because just locking people up and throwing away the key is not okay. You know, when I was little, I used to think when people got in trouble, they needed to go to jail or they needed to go to prison. I didn't know any better.
Right.
But, you know, when I learned about all of this and how it went, it made me angry. And I know that there are good people in there and they deserve a second chance.
Right, and I agree with you with that.
I do too. So was that the case for either one of you guys' husbands? Like, did they do time based off of another person's crime? Like, that they did the crime with
Yes.
someone? Your husband?
With my husband, it was
Yes.
kind of a mixture of both. Yes.
What, like?
What you mean?
Because it was more than one instance. So, you know, it was more than one instance, but then they tried to tie it all to both of them.
So
You
it was a
understand what I'm
string
saying?
of
Correct.
incidents
String
that
of
happened.
incidents that, you know, he might not have participated in this one, but he participated in this one. Well,
Okay.
I'm just going to group you with all of it.
It was just like Linda explained. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're present, you get charged with the same crime.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if you're involved, if you drove, if you were present, you get the same
Yeah,
charge. It
that's
doesn't
true.
matter if you touched a weapon or you didn't, or if you went in and robbed somebody, if you were in the car and they came and got in it, it's the same thing. And there's a lot of people in prison who don't deserve to be there for those reasons. And there's a lot of innocent people. You know, Virginia is not a very forgiving state.
Right.
When they mess up. When they lock people up by mistake, they don't say I'm sorry
Right.
and let you go. They let
Right.
you sit there and figure out your way out.
And then, you know, also, even when they had parole or whatever, and if you was innocent or whatever, and you said you didn't do it, and you're still trying to maintain your innocence, I didn't realize that you still had to say you did it in order
You
to be
do.
considered for parole. So
do.
you're innocent, instead of them saying, okay, let me look into it to see, you know, if there's really truth to what you're saying, that you're really innocent, but you want me to say, yes, I did it, just so you can maybe give me parole.
I think for some people they
And that
have to
don't make sense.
decide if maintaining their innocence is more important than their freedom, and that's unfortunate.
Right.
But some people do have to say I'm sorry and that for their
For something
crime,
they
but
did.
even though they didn't do it.
Right.
They just have to decide what's more important, their freedom, and they can have the opportunity to fight it later once they're free, but sometimes you have to do
Just
it.
want to be free.
Right. So, and I know you said that, like, your husband, and I don't know if you mentioned about your husband, but they're mixed. If you with someone, and you might have did this one, but you might not have did this one, but they group it all together, right? So now, did that happen with your husband as well? Was he with someone?
It did. He was with other people,
Okay.
and he didn't commit a crime, but he was present.
Okay, and so, was it the same thing with your husband? He didn't commit the crime, but he was present?
No, he did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Not in all the cases. You
Right,
understand what I'm
right.
saying?
But he did
yeah.
do some.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so what about
She
the
said,
people
"Oh, yes."
that they was with? Are y'all helping them, or did you help any of those other people?
Well, yeah, the bill that actually affected my husband, it affects his co-defendants too. So it helps them, but they still have to be, just like you said, whether they feel like they were innocent or guilty, they still have to
Be
come to grips
remorseful.
with that. They have to maintain a good history, and while they're in prison, they have to have good behavior. So they still have to prove themselves. You know, if they want to fight the other things once they get out, unfortunately, that's what they have to do.
So have any of them got out?
No, not.
Okay, what about with your husband? No. Okay, so none of them
Well,
got out.
They ain't asked me for no help, but if they come to me, I help them. I help
You will?
anybody. Of course.
So you
Everybody
guys,
deserves freedom
Right.
if you have done what is necessary
Sir.
on the inside to better yourself. I don't care who you are. You deserve a second chance. Now, if you've already, let me rephrase this. Now,
Okay.
if you done been in and been out and been in again,
Oh, right, no.
and then all of a sudden now, no, I don't do third and fourth chances. Right now, I'm focusing on second chance.
Right.
because you have to kind of like help those that haven't received
See,
the
like a
second
second
chance.
chance.
And reinstating parole will help everyone.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
It gives
Everybody.
everybody a second chance.
Right.
And the hope. That is so
Yeah.
important.
Important.
Hope. No human being on this earth should control the hope of anybody, and especially the government.
That's right.
Okay.
I think a lot of times the crime doesn't fit the time. And, you know, when our loved ones are sentenced to this time, it's unfortunate, but sometimes we are sentenced as well. So we're going through, you know, day to day with them as well. But I have a question. Have you guys ever helped anyone and helped them get out, but they actually became a repeat offender?
Oh yeah.
I don't think we've been in the game that long, and just the bills that we got passed were recent, like within the last year. So only here recently are people just now starting to come home.
Okay.
I think probably about 20 to 30 people under the Fishback law have been released. I think it's closer to 20 have been released. So they haven't really had time, I don't think, to do that yet.
Right.
Right.
Because if they were sitting there waiting for the doors to open just so they
Yeah.
can turn around, it's like what?
We hope not. We've been in contact with a lot of prisoners, and we hope that they see our efforts, and they put in that effort when they get released to live a better way.
So that's good. So you guys helped 20 to 30 people so far?
Well, that's what the bill did. The bill,
Well,
that's-
what you-
20 to 30
Y'all
people
effort.
have been
Right, well,
that was
paroled.
parole.
It helped. The bill actually
But that was
gave
because of y'all,
over
right?
500 people parole eligibility. They haven't all had parole hearings yet. Some of them have been denied, but we know at least 20 have been released.
So why do you think some of them been denied? Like, what would be a
Well,
reason on if you've been in prison for 20 some years? Let's just use 23. If you've been in prison for 23 years, what would be a reason if you made it in front of the parole that you could possibly get denied, other than maybe
Well,
like
I mean,
conduct?
it's like what
Yeah.
what we talked about before is if you don't have the right mindset to carry yourself in a certain way, you might have been given a 100-year sentence, and you're like, screw it, I'm gonna just do what I want to do. I don't
Right.
gotta listen to nobody. I don't have to go to school. The correctional facility is not correctional. You have to correct yourself.
Right.
You have to join classes, you have to get a job, you have to maintain your behavior. They don't do that for you. They just monitor you. So anything you do in there is by choice.
Right.
So you either have to choose to go this way or that way. And some people don't choose to go that way.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people only see people coming home. They don't see the hours and the time that you guys have put into it. So everyone is saying, hey, Buddy is home or Jim is home, but they don't see all of what you guys put into it to assist them in getting home. So Virginia does not have parole. It's just the Fishback that's been
And people
Bill.
pre-95. So basically pre-2000. So anybody pre-2000 would be parole eligible.
And it's important that when the guys come out, that they are exemplifying the behavior that it takes to stay out.
Right.
correct.
So that, that helps in the fight. You know what I'm saying? We can say, hey, look, these guys are getting out and they're staying out. They're becoming productive citizens. And that is what's happening now. We have so many, guys who have come out. They're advocating. They're out here. They're a good friend of ours, Paul Taylor. What's up, Paul? He always says the returned citizen is relevant. These are not formerly incarcerated people. These are returned citizens. They're returning back to society. So, and now with the governor restoring the rights, now people coming straight out of prison can go register to vote. They can get their rights restored and go register
That's
to vote.
right.
That is important.
And that helps you guys when you guys are fighting and trying to get bills passed.
Yeah,
That
it's
kind of helps
also-
you guys too, because you have the proof to show.
Yeah.
You have this amount of people get out. They doing this. They doing that. Versus they
We
coming
need
out.
people
and they
who
going
were
right back.
released to help us.
Right.
Because they have to show, that they're maintaining good behavior, because that's also a personal choice. There's not very
Exactly.
good reentry programs in Virginia, so that's also a personal choice of how you
Right.
move forward.
That was actually going to be my question. Is it a requirement of you guys, if you, assist them, that they have to come back and work with you guys to show that, hey,
Yeah, that would be.
We
a
actually
We
good
ask
one,
them
too.
to, some of them don't, and some of them do reach out to us. It's not really a requirement, because I personally have made it a vow not to really help an individual person, because I prefer to do it as a group effort and
Right.
stick with legislation. I'm not really knowledgeable or qualified to help one specific case, you know what I mean, unless it's
Okay.
like personal to me. But that it's just important. It's important that they come back in the end and show them that the people that they were talking about did not go the path that they assumed that they would go, or that they're telling the news and the public that they're gonna, reoffend or recidivate and go back to prison. They need to show them that they're wrong.
Right.
Which is an argument that Republicans have. The first thing they'll say is the recidivism rate is low. Well, of course it's low.
That's why.
Ain't nobody getting out.
Right.
I mean, what else would be low?
So how did you guys feel? And I'm sure it wasn't like you said, it wasn't a one-time thing. Keep going before the board or whomever to see if your husbands can get out. But that day that you actually received the message saying, "Hey, he's coming home," like, please, tell us how you actually felt. What was going through your mind?
I'm gonna tell you right now. I shouted all in my house like I was shouting over glory. I just want you to know that. All the praise and honor and glory goes to the Lord for me.
That's right.
So yeah, I screamed, I hollered, I cried, I shouted, I did all of the above.
Now, did he tell you, or you receive a letter or a call?
I got a phone call.
Okay.
Oh, you got a phone call?
I got a phone call because for me it was a pardon.
Right.
So I got a phone call from the governor's office.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And what about you?
I started to get calls that you don't normally get. So we started to, our hope got a little bit better, when we started getting calls from, is it okay if he comes to live there? Things like that. And we knew things were moving in the right direction, but he's the one that actually told me, and I just shook and cried and screamed and yelled. But I was very emotional and happy and excited and overwhelmed because, things were about to change. Yeah.
So how long did you do? I know you said your husband just got out in August. When did your husband get out, you said?
April the 3rd of last year.
Of last year too? So both 2020? Oh, okay.
Also, both of y'all just had like yearly anniversaries for you guys'
Almost.
husbands coming home.
Yes.
Almost.
Not me. No,
And-
he'll be a year in August.
That's right.
A year,
Yeah.
August, no, not April.
He's been
Okay.
home a year, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and did you guys get married while they were incarcerated?
I did.
Did that help? Does that like really help their time? Like they say that it does? Like it helps?
That's
Did that
TV
help with your
pint.
fight?
I
With your
did
fight?
too, and I can say that marriage is not for everybody. It's being married to someone who is incarcerated is not something that everybody can handle. It's rough, and we were married while he was incarcerated, but we also have known each other for over 20 years. We have a daughter together, and
okay.
before he went to prison. So, but it's not anything that I would recommend to anybody to do, because it was hard, but it was worth it.
But did that help with your fight when you were trying to fight to get them out? Did it help that was your husband?
Right, did it cut the time?
Yeah,
Did it cut some of the time off? Did they get some type of time off for that?
Oh Lord, no.
No.
Oh, they don't.
That's TV. That's TV.
No,
Not at all.
Not at all.
But have y'all heard that before, or is it just me that?
Yes, I heard it on TV,
Bad TV show.
not in real life.
Bad TV show.
No.
That's definitely
That
not
doesn't
reality.
happen.
Oh, okay.
There's no conjugal visits either.
Did either one of you guys' husbands get juvenile time? Did they go in as juveniles, or they were already adults?
They were already adults.
Oh, okay.
Already adults.
Okay.
So, no.
So what I want to know, so when you started the fight, right? I want to know like exactly what were some of the steps that you had to take to even start, to even get to where you are now, as far as like, I know you said you had to learn his case. You said your husband, you said you had to learn your husband's case. But what were some of the other steps you had to take in order to get it presented or on, the governor's desk or in front of the legislative people, the parole people? What were some of the steps that you had to take?
For me, I started out, submitting pardon requests like all the time. So you constantly getting the name out there. You can only submit a pardon request every 2 years
To the governor.
to the governor's office. So it was about that. Then it was about putting a face out there. Advocating, putting a face out there, wanting change.
So explain that. When you said putting the face, putting your face or his face? Your
Mine.
face. So basically you was going basically to Richmond.
That's right.
Or to DC or
Correct.
wherever.
But
Okay.
learning what was going on and learning how to look at legislation and the process and, you know, actually learning the process and educating myself is what really got me really going and out
Okay.
there. And being humble, you know, quietly. I'm a real, you know, I don't leave my name in lights.
Aggressive.
I'm famous in my father's eyes. So, you know, I try to do things on the down low, honestly, and just doing things quietly and humbly, watching, learning. You know, people see you when you don't think you're being seen.
Right.
That's right.
So, you know, you can't go out, you can't go out there advocating for your loved one and you out there, well, you know, girl, yeah. Don't want to see all that. Don't do that. You understand what I'm saying? So you got to understand what you're working with. You know,
That's
you
right.
can't go somewhere and have a whole attitude or disposition. You know, you want help from these people. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So you have to go with the mindset of humbleness, gratefulness, all that good stuff.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I definitely understand it. I can look at it from both ways though, because if you have a child or a family member or friend or whatever that's in, you know, during this time, and then you're frustrated and you're in an element that you know nothing about, so therefore you just doing what you know, but not realizing that when you're in a different realm, you know, you have to carry yourself a little different. So I think that comes with time and consistency and realizing like, hey, like, you know, I'm out of my league, so I need to get all I can get to make sure that when I am around these people, I do know how to conduct myself.
Right.
So it's definitely a double sword there. I
And
couldn't
that is
imagine.
part of our prison reform aspect too, because we understand what families go through when they go to visit their loved ones,
Right.
and all the mess you have to go through just to get in there for a visit. You know, all the
Right.
attitudes that you catch from correctional officers and
Very traumatizing.
I mean, you know,
Really?
oh my God, oh, yes.
She said traumatizing. Like,
It is. It is. It is. I don't know if you guys
You can
recently
be harassed by guards. You can be singled out for certain things.
I don't know
You're
if y'all
not allowed
remember,
to
but-
touch.
Right.
I
A
mean,
little girl got strip searched. A child
Yeah.
was strip searched.
you could be menstruating and be pulled aside and strip searched for wearing a tampon or a pad. We've been through a lot of things, and
Oh,
it can
man.
be traumatizing, especially for children.
And
so,
that
so at this point, where you are now in your fight, you're just trying to advocate for others and get the word out about voting, about
Yes.
the justice system,
Yes.
about how you can help. So with all of that being said, so each one of you, Kari, you can go first. Let everyone know, because it's almost time for us to get ready to wrap up.
What?
Yes,
Wait a damn minute.
yes, I don't know about that. So we have just a couple of minutes. So really quickly, Kari, let everyone know exactly how, you know, I know you told them to go to the site, but I'm gonna need you to repeat it again for those who joined us late. So you repeat the site again. You know exactly what you can possibly do to assist them and how to get in contact.
They can start by registering to vote, and the governor actually just released a lot of people to be able to get their voting rights back recently. Both of our husbands are now eligible to vote. They
Great.
can start.
Oh, and they haven't
when
been
they-
on a year.
Yeah, well, they can follow the page, and we could teach them how legislation works and how they can advocate with us. That's basically all we do. As far as personal cases, we do try to guide people and give them advice on things that they can do personally. We don't give out legal advice, but
Right.
we try to guide people as best we can, and just build an army. We need an army of people. We need families, and we need people who have gotten out of prison they have to show, and we need them on the forefront.
Right.
They need to show that they're reformed, that they're good citizens, and that the parole board is making good decisions.
See, and I think the people that just got out, now I think they play a major part by
They do.
joining you guys.
They do.
And
That's
that
right.
should be something that the number one thing they would want to do is to join you guys to help those that they left
We
behind.
need them.
Right.
They're probably the most important part of the fight.
Right. Okay. And you?
Vote. Vote, 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 vote. I cannot stress that. Vote. Vote for Terry McAuliffe. Yes, I'm putting it out there. They are wonderful Democratic candidates that are running. Please don't get me wrong. But in this day, in this hour, in this time in Virginia, we need somebody that's going to be bold and progressive to continue the fight. And he's already aware of it. He's already been there. He knows what we need. He knows what needs to be done. Not only that, but Terry McAuliffe, once he's elected again, is going to create an office of the returned citizen. No other governor has come with a plan like that. So when people come out of incarceration, they'll be able to come to one office for help and assistance with jobs, housing, transportation, mental issues if they need counseling, substance abuse, all of those things. They'll be able to come to one location for the Office of the Returned Citizen. And the beauty of that is that Terry McAuliffe wants to employ returned citizens to run that office, because it's easier to trust those that have been where you are coming from,
Right.
and understand what you have been going through.
That's true.
So I think it is a wonderful idea. I think, and just to let everybody know, Terry McAuliffe campaign, don't know I came up here, they ain't paid me, they ain't did none of that. But people need to know the importance of voting. Our community needs to know, and that is so important. Terry McAuliffe needs to be our governor. Hala Ayala should be a great lieutenant governor. Jay Jones for attorney general. That's what we need.
And then they can join you guys.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. Now, when we get them home, what can we do to help them? Because another obstacle they may have is finding employment.
There's
So-
a lot of companies that employ people with felonies, and I've actually started building with some companies to get some contacts, and I will be posting that on the page once I feel like I have a substantial amount that will be helpful. They are handed a paper in prison when they are released, I believe, that has a list, but it's not 100% accurate.
Okay.
So we also have some companies that have actually changed to employ people with felonies because they follow the page and because they're personal friends and things like that. So we hope that eventually we can have a better, more information to give people.
And that's what the
that'll
Office
help.
of the Returned Citizen
Yeah.
would be for. And, just to throw this plug in there, great ending to my husband coming home. But my husband's first job is he is employed with the victim of the crime that he was incarcerated for. She gave him a job.
Wow. That's nobody but God.
Really.
Okay.
That's nobody
Oh.
but God. But before we wrap up, we have two other questions. One question I had was, I lost my train of thought. That alone, what you just said about your husband being employed by his victim,
We running over?
is nobody but God. But Miss Linda, what happened in April for you? I was online, I do my little research. So I'm trying to figure out, I saw you were inducted into something, or
Well,
what was going on with that?
I got chosen to serve on a board in the state of Virginia that deals with the sentencing guidelines, overseeing the sentencing guidelines and how they run here in the state. So to have an advocate at the table is profound, and I just thank God for it.
Oh, that's good. Congratulations.
Yes,
So
yes.
exactly what would you be doing though? Like,
I don't know yet.
oh, you don't know, you haven't
This is
started.
fresh out the oven. Fresh out the oven, but I will tell you this.
But that's still good though.
It is. I will
Congratulations.
definitely be on top of it. I can tell you that.
Congratulations. That's really good.
Yes.
So we asked all of our guests who come on Wait Again a Minute podcast to give us some feedback, questions, or comments about the podcast. What would you say, Miss Linda, in regards to Wait Again a Minute podcast?
Y'all keep supporting these people. Wait a damn minute. Y'all keep supporting these girls. I like that. I like it because you have a platform to get information out, and we need that. We need a platform to keep our citizens informed.
Right.
So that is, hey, and if anybody else out there has a platform, you want us to come out there, hey, call us out.
Okay, and what about you?
I just want to say that I was completely nervous, and you guys were really comforting
No.
and sweet, and that was nice and comforting. So I appreciate you for that.
You're
Okay, well, you're welcome.
Well, we
We're glad
actually
you guys
appreciate
came.
you. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Goget. I didn't mean
Okay.
to step across you.
Well, you know, it's after 8, so it's time for us to get ready to wrap it up. But we really right. We're really glad you guys came out. You shared some information with me, as well as the rest of us here and everyone out there. So before we go, I just want you to give them, Ms. Kari, if you have a site, or just say it one more time, and then we're going to tell everyone good night. But we need everyone to make sure that they can follow you guys and find out more information. Those who need help can contact you guys. You know, you can lead them down the right road possibly. So one more time before we go.
It's called Restore Justice in Virginia. Right now, it's only on Facebook. We don't have a website right now, but
Okay. Hit them
that's
in their inbox.
basically, yeah.
So guys, hit them in their inbox. You need help. And thank y'all for watching. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, ladies.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.